The twin suns of Varel burned like red fire in the sky, painting the world in shades of gold and blood. The planet had once been full of music, laughter, and shining towers that touched the clouds. But now the air carried only the sound of sorrow and the silence of the dead. For 7 long years, the Varelian Empire had fought against the humans of Earth, and the cost of that war had broken both worlds. From the high balcony of the Crystal Palace, Emperor Cathor watched the horizon where smoke still rose from distant battlefields. His dark, scaled hands gripped the railing tightly. He was an old ruler, tired and heavy with regret. The war had taken too much, his people, his pride, and perhaps his own heart. Behind him stood his daughter, Princess Alara, the last light of his home. Her silver eyes shimmered with fear as she watched the ruined lands below. She was young and gentle, nothing like her father. Where he was a warrior, she was a healer. Where he believed in power, she believed in peace. And yet, even she could not escape the shadow of the war. Today was the day she feared the most. The day when the enemy would walk into their home. Alara's heart pounded as she looked toward the great hall below. Soldiers lined the floor, their armor reflecting the dying sunlight. Soon the human general would arrive, the one they called Marcus Kane, the Iron Wolf of Earth. Stories about him had reached every corner of the galaxy. They said he was a monster in battle, a man who never smiled, whose eyes turned cold before he killed. He had destroyed fleets, burned cities, and crushed armies with his strategy and his will. And yet somehow he was also the reason the war had ended. Alara didn't understand it. How could the same man who brought death also bring peace? Her father's voice broke the silence. "Do not tremble, Alara," he said without turning. "He is a warrior, but he has agreed to peace. Without him we would all be ash." Alara took a deep breath, but her voice was soft and uncertain. "Father, must I truly face him?" Cathor turned to look at her. His golden eyes were full of authority and sadness. "Yes, my child. You are heir to this throne. You must meet him and show that Varel still has dignity." Alara lowered her gaze, her hands tightening around the folds of her robe. She tried to be brave, but fear coiled inside her chest. The thought of standing before that human, of looking into the eyes of the man who had destroyed half her world, made her heart ache. She whispered, barely audible, "Not him, Dad. I'm afraid of that human warrior." The Emperor's face softened for a moment. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Courage is not the absence of fear, my daughter. It is facing what frightens us most. The human has lost much as well. You will see." But she could not believe it. To her, humans were wild, ruthless beings. She had seen their ships raining fire upon her people. She had watched their machines crush soldiers like insects. How could a human understand mercy? Outside, the twin suns sank lower, casting long red shadows over the palace. Alara watched them fade and thought of all the lives lost under their light. Somewhere beyond those skies, billions of souls were gone because of this war, human and Varelian alike. A deep horn echoed through the halls. The massive palace gates began to open. Alara's heart skipped a beat. The human delegation had arrived. She followed her father to the throne room, her steps slow and heavy. The sound of boots, human boots, filled the hall. When she saw the man leading them, her breath caught in her throat. He was taller than any Varelian warrior, his armor scarred and blackened by battle. His face was hard, eyes gray like a storm, and every line on his skin spoke of loss. General Marcus Kane, the Iron Wolf himself. The moment his gaze met hers, Alara froze. She had never seen such eyes before, full of power, pain, and something else she could not name. And for the first time in her life, the Princess of Varel felt the truth of her fear. He was not just a human warrior. He was the face of everything the war had cost them, and tomorrow, he would decide if peace truly lived, or if the fires of war would rise again. The great crystal doors of the palace opened with a deep echo that rolled through the hall like thunder. Every Varelian noble, guard, and servant turned toward the entrance. Their hearts beat fast as they watched the humans step inside. At the front of the group walked General Marcus Kane, the man who had brought their empire to its knees. His armor was black, heavy, and covered in scars of battle. His face was marked by years of pain, and his gray eyes looked like storms ready to break. He did not walk with pride. He walked with the heavy calm of someone who had seen too much death. Behind him, 2 human officers followed silently. They carried no weapons, but their presence still filled the room with tension. The air felt thicker, heavier, as if the very walls were holding their breath. From her place beside the throne, Princess Alara stared at the human warrior. He was not what she expected. He was not cruel or mocking like the stories said. Instead, he seemed tired, like a man who had forgotten how to rest. The Emperor, Cathor, stood tall as Marcus approached. The human stopped a few paces away and bowed his head slightly. "Emperor Cathor," he said, his voice deep but calm. "The war is over. I come to seal peace between our people." The Emperor studied him carefully. "You could have destroyed us," he said. "Why did you not?" Marcus lifted his eyes. There was no pride in them, only sadness, because enough have already died. "I did not want another child to cry because of the choices of men." Those words hung in the air like a soft wound. The court was silent. Even Alara felt something shift in her heart. Cathor's tone softened, though his face remained firm. "Then let this peace begin with respect." He motioned toward his daughter. "This is my heir, Princess Alara of Virel." Marcus turned his gaze to her. Their eyes met for the first time. In that moment, Alara felt a strange chill travel through her body. His eyes held so much pain, so much weariness that she couldn't look away. It was as if he carried the weight of every lost life within him. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Marcus gave a small nod. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I regret the pain my people caused yours. I fought because I believed it would save lives. But I know. I was wrong in many ways." Alara's voice trembled. "You regret?" "Yes," Marcus said simply. "War teaches only one truth, that no one truly wins." His words made her heart ache. All her life she had been told humans were heartless, that they destroyed worlds without mercy. But the man standing before her looked more like a broken hero than a monster. Still, she could not forget the screams, the burning cities, the loss of her friends. Fear and anger tangled inside her chest. "Why should we trust you?" she whispered. "You killed so many of us." Marcus did not flinch. He lowered his head. "Because I will spend the rest of my life making sure it never happens again." The Emperor stepped forward, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. "Then you are welcome on Virel, General Kane. But know this, if you betray our peace, even the stars will not hide you." Marcus gave a small, tired smile. "Understood, Your Majesty. I have no wish for more blood." As the meeting ended, Marcus turned to leave with his officers. But before he walked out, his eyes found Alara once more. For a moment, their gazes locked again, hers filled with fear, his filled with quiet sorrow. When he was gone, Alara let out a shaky breath. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see, my child, he did not come to conquer." But Alara's heart still raced. She turned toward the massive doors where the human had disappeared and whispered softly, "Then why do I still feel so afraid?" Outside, the twin suns sank lower behind the palace towers, casting long red shadows across the crystal floor. The war might have ended, but inside Alara's heart, another battle had just begun, between fear and understanding, between hate and something new she could not yet name. And in the distance, Marcus Kane stood under the alien sky, staring at those same red suns. He whispered to himself, "Maybe peace can begin, even in a place that once feared me." Night fell softly over the shining towers of Virel. The two suns had gone, leaving a sky full of quiet stars. The palace was calm again, but inside Princess Alara's heart, a storm was still raging. She sat in her chamber, staring out at the city below. The streets glowed faintly with blue lights, and from far away came the hum of rebuilding machines. The war had ended, but the world still felt broken. She could still see the scars, the ruins, the ashes, and the faces of those who would never come home. Her thoughts kept returning to the human warrior, General Marcus Kane. The way he had looked at her earlier haunted her. His eyes were not the eyes of a cruel man. They were tired and full of grief. It made no sense. How could someone who had led so much destruction look so human? Unable to sleep, Alara left her chamber and wandered down the silent halls. The palace guards bowed as she passed, but she barely noticed them. Something was pulling her outside toward the gardens. When she reached the crystal courtyard, she stopped in surprise. There, sitting alone beneath the silver-leaf trees, was Marcus Kane. His armor was gone, and he wore only a simple dark uniform. His back was to her, and he stared up at the stars like a man searching for something long lost. For a moment, Alara hesitated. Every part of her wanted to turn away, but something deeper, something she couldn't explain, urged her to step closer. She took a small breath and spoke softly. "You cannot sleep either." Marcus turned his head slightly, his face calm but weary. "Sleep is hard to find after war," he said. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. "When I close my eyes, I see the faces of those I couldn't save." Alara felt a strange heaviness in her chest. She walked slowly toward him and stood a few steps away. The night breeze carried the faint scent of alien flowers, and for a while neither spoke. Finally, she asked, "Why did you fight us? Why did your people bring war to Varel?" Marcus sighed and leaned back against the cold stone bench. "Because both our leaders believed fear was the only way to survive," he said. "They were wrong. I fought because I thought it would protect my home. I was a soldier before I was a man of peace." He looked down at his hands, scarred and rough. "But the more we fought, the less I understood why. Every battle made me lose another piece of myself." Alara's eyes softened. "You regret it," she said quietly. He nodded. "Every day. I lost friends, family even. My daughter." His voice broke slightly at the last word. She was only 7. "The enemy bomb fell before I could get her out." Alara's breath caught. I'm so sorry," she whispered. Marcus smiled faintly, but there was no joy in it. "The worst part is that I hated the Varelians for it. I wanted revenge. I thought it would make the pain go away. But when I finally stood on the ashes of your cities, I saw your children crying the same way mine had. That was when I understood. There are no sides in pain." Alara sat down beside him, her voice soft and full of emotion. "All this time I thought humans only knew how to destroy. But you—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You sound like someone who just wants to heal." Marcus looked at her with tired eyes. "Maybe that's all any of us want, Princess, to heal. To stop feeling like monsters." The two of them sat in silence for a long while, listening to the soft rustle of the alien trees. The stars above shimmered gently, reflecting in the small pond nearby. For the first time, Alara didn't feel fear when she looked at him. She saw not an enemy, but a soul as lost and wounded as her own. When Marcus finally stood, he said softly, "Thank you for listening." And as he walked away into the quiet night, Alara felt something change within her heart. The fear that once ruled her was fading. In its place grew a small, fragile spark of understanding, something she had never expected to feel for a human. Perhaps peace did not begin with treaties or words. Perhaps it began here, in the quiet between two broken hearts. Morning came slowly over the shining towers of Varel. The red and gold light of the twin suns filled the palace halls, touching the crystal walls like fire. But inside the grand meeting chamber, the air was heavy with tension. Emperor Cathor sat upon his high seat, surrounded by his council. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet unease. The war was over, yes, but peace was still fragile, like glass that could shatter with one wrong word. At the center of the room stood General Marcus Kane, the human warrior. He wore a clean uniform now, though the scars of battle still marked his face and hands. He stood tall and still, his expression unreadable. Cathor's voice filled the chamber. "You say you bring peace, human, but how can we trust a species that almost burned our world to ash?" Marcus did not look offended. His gray eyes were steady. "Because I was the one who stopped it, Your Majesty," he said simply. "Earth's leaders wanted complete victory. I refused. I saw too much death already. I convinced them that peace was worth more than power." The Emperor's fingers drummed on the armrest of his throne. "And why should I believe your words?" Marcus met his gaze. "Because I'm still here," he said softly. "If I wanted conquest, I would have come with an army, not a peace treaty," the council members whispered among themselves. Some believed him. Others did not. Old wounds were hard to forget. From the side of the chamber, Princess Alara watched in silence. Her heart beat faster with every word. She could feel her father's doubt, but she could also see the truth in the human's eyes. There was no hatred there, only sorrow. When the council began to argue, Cathor raised his hand. "Enough. The humans say they seek peace, yet they have ships orbiting above our skies. Their weapons could still destroy us if they wished." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're right. They could. But they won't, not while I still breathe." The Emperor frowned. "You think you can control your leaders?" Marcus's answer was quiet but full of strength. "I can't control them, but I can remind them what we all lost. I was there when Earth cities fell. I was there when our oceans turned red. I will not allow that to happen again, to any world. A long silence filled the room. Then Cathor stood. "We will sign the peace treaty," he said at last. "But know this, human, if you break your word, I will burn the stars themselves to stop you." Marcus bowed his head. Understood. The council ended and everyone left except Alara. She approached her father carefully, her silver eyes full of concern. "Father," she said softly, "he speaks with honesty." "Can you not feel it?" Cathor sighed deeply. "You are too kind, my daughter. That human is dangerous. His calm face hides a soldier's fire. Do not trust him easily." "But he saved us," she whispered. "He could have destroyed Varel, but he didn't. Why would a monster spare his enemy?" Cathor turned to her, his expression firm. "Because sometimes monsters pretend to be heroes, Alara. I have ruled too long to mistake kindness for weakness." She bowed her head but said no more. Deep down she knew her father was only protecting her, but she also knew he was wrong this time. Later that evening, Alara walked into the garden again. There she saw Marcus standing near the fountain, speaking with a few guards. When he noticed her, he nodded politely. "You were brave today," she said softly. Marcus smiled faintly. "Peace requires more courage than war." She looked at him carefully. "My father still doubts you." "I would too if I were him," Marcus replied. "After all that's happened, trust is not something you can ask for. It's something you earn." Alara nodded slowly. "Then I hope he gives you the chance to earn it." Marcus looked up at the sky where distant human ships floated like silver dots among the stars. "So do I, Princess. Because if peace fails here, I don't think I'll have the strength to fight again." Alara's heart ached at his words. For the first time she saw not a warrior or an enemy, but a man carrying the weight of two worlds. As the sun sank once more, their red light bathed the garden in gold. The air was still, almost sacred, and though neither said it aloud, both knew one truth. Peace had begun not on paper but between two hearts willing to believe. The night was calm over the palace of Virel. The twin moons hung high, bathing the gardens in silver light. Everything seemed peaceful, yet in the shadows, something dark moved, something that threatened to destroy the fragile bond that had just begun to grow between two worlds. Inside the palace, Princess Alara walked through the quiet halls, her mind full of thoughts. Ever since meeting General Marcus Kane, she could not forget his words, his sorrow, or the look in his eyes. She no longer saw him as the monster from her childhood stories. He was a man broken by war, trying to protect peace with what little strength he had left. She found herself hoping her father would see that too. But just as she turned toward the grand corridor, a loud explosion shook the ground beneath her feet. The sound tore through the palace like thunder. The walls trembled, lights flickered, and screams echoed from every direction. Alara gasped, her heart racing. "What's happening?" she cried. From the distance came the sound of plasma fire. The guards rushed through the hall shouting, "We are under attack! Protect the Emperor!" Alara's fear turned to panic. She ran toward the throne room, but smoke filled the air, making it hard to see. Through the chaos, she saw figures dressed in black armor, Varelian extremists, furious that the Emperor had made peace with humans. They wanted war again. They wanted Marcus dead. In the middle of the confusion, a human soldier stumbled through the corridor injured. Behind him came Marcus Kane, his face calm but fierce. His armor glowed faintly in the light of the fires, his plasma blade already drawn. "Princess," he called out. "Stay down." Before she could reply, a bolt of energy shot past her head, hitting the wall behind her. She ducked and covered her ears as the hall filled with the sound of battle. Marcus moved like a storm. His movements were sharp, controlled, deadly. Every step he took was a shield between her and danger. He struck down attackers with the precision of a warrior who had fought too many wars. But there were too many of them. The rebels came from both sides, shouting for vengeance. Alara's eyes widened as one of them aimed a weapon directly at her. She froze in terror. Before she could move, Marcus turned, shouting, "Get back!" and leapt in front of her. The blast hit him square in the side. He grunted, falling to one knee, but he didn't stop. With his good arm, he swung his blade, cutting down the rebel who had fired the shot. Then he turned toward Alara, his face pale but steady. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice strained. She shook her head, tears filling her eyes. "No, but you Doesn't matter, he said quickly. We have to move. He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the side hall. The palace was burning now, flames rising from shattered walls. The sound of weapons echoed everywhere. Marcus led her through the smoke until they reached a smaller chamber, where the Emperor's guards were regrouping. When they finally stopped, Marcus collapsed to the floor, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his uniform. Ilara fell to her knees beside him, her hands shaking. You're bleeding. I'll call the medics.
He caught her wrist gently.
Don't waste time on me, he said, his breathing rough. Your father, the Emperor, he's in danger. They want him next. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Why would you protect me? Why would you risk your life for people who once called you their enemy? Marcus gave a weak smile. Because no child should die crying again. His words struck her heart like lightning. She pressed her hands against his wound, refusing to let him slip away. You saved me, she whispered, her voice breaking. You saved my people. I was wrong about you. Marcus tried to answer, but his strength was fading fast. His eyes began to close, his voice just a whisper now. Keep the peace alive, Princess. And then his head fell back and everything went quiet around them. Outside, the battle still raged, but Ilara no longer heard it. All she could see was the human who had once terrified her, now lying wounded at her feet, bleeding to protect the world that had once hated him. In that moment, her fear was gone. All that remained was sorrow, gratitude, and a new kind of courage she never knew she had. She looked toward the burning halls and whispered through her tears, I won't let your sacrifice be in vain, Marcus. I swear it. The night that began in fire would end in legend. The palace gardens were silent now, except for the distant sounds of battle fading into the night. Smoke rose from the shattered halls, curling into the sky like dark ribbons. The fires that had once threatened to consume Varel were now dying down, leaving a heavy stillness over the city. In the center of the chaos, Princess Ilara knelt beside General Marcus Kane. His breathing was shallow, his armor streaked with blood. Every movement he made seemed painful, yet he refused to let go of her hand. You can't leave me here, she said, her voice shaking. Tears streamed down her cheeks, falling onto his chest. You brought peace. You can't die now. Marcus gave a faint smile, weak but real. Peace doesn't come easy, he whispered. It is bought with pain. Ilara pressed her hands harder against his wound, trying to stop the blood. Her heart was pounding, fear and sorrow twisting together inside her. You fought for everyone, she said. For my people, for mine, for all of us. You can't give up now. He coughed, blood staining his lips, but his eyes stayed fixed on hers. You have to understand, he said slowly, that war leaves scars. Not all can heal. Her fingers trembled as she gripped his hand. Then let me heal them with you, she said softly. Please, live. Marcus's gaze softened. For the first time in days, the iron walls around his heart seemed to crumble. He looked at Ilara, at her silver eyes glimmering with hope and courage, and something inside him shifted. You see me as human, he whispered, each word heavy. Not as a monster. Or a killer. Yes, she said, her voice steady despite her tears. I was afraid of you at first. I thought you were nothing but a warrior who brought death, but now? Now I see the man who protected my people when no one else would. His lips curved into a faint smile, and for a moment the pain seemed to lessen. Then maybe all this was worth it, he said, his voice breaking. The medics finally arrived, rushing through the garden with their equipment. They moved quickly, tending to Marcus's wounds, their hands steady but urgent. Ilara stayed beside him, holding his hand through every stitch, every breath, every heartbeat. Marcus looked at her once more. Promise me, Princess, that the peace will last, he whispered. That my sacrifice means something. I promise, she said, her voice firm despite the tears. I swear it, Marcus. I won't let your life be wasted. Ilara felt his hand squeeze hers faintly, his strength returning just enough to give her hope. Good, then maybe humanity isn't lost. His voice faded, slow and deliberate, as if each word was a gift to the world he had fought to save. The medics worked tirelessly through the night, stabilizing him, and slowly the deep red of his blood changed to the pale hope of survival. Ilara refused to leave his side, talking softly, telling him about her people, the lives that would now flourish because of him. She told him that children would play in the streets again, that cities would be rebuilt, and that Varelians and humans could learn to trust each other through the night. Marcus listened, his eyes drifting closed and open, holding on to her voice like a lifeline. Every word she spoke was a thread tying him back from the edge, reminding him why he had fought, why he had survived. By dawn, the first rays of the twin suns broke through the clouds, bathing the garden in warm light. Marcus Kane, the Iron Wolf, was still alive. His breathing was steady now, and although he was weak, the spark of life in his eyes returned. Elara held his hand, her heart full of relief and awe. "You're going to live," she said. "I won't let you die, not now. Not ever." Marcus gave a faint, tired laugh, and for the first time he seemed human, not the feared warrior, not the monster of stories, but a man who had given everything to save a world that had once feared him. And in that quiet moment, beneath the rising twin suns, a fragile hope bloomed. A hope born from sacrifice, courage, and the bond of two hearts who had learned that even in the darkest war, humanity could shine brighter than any star. The palace had recovered from the chaos of war, but its halls still carried the echoes of that fateful night. Scorched walls had been repaired, gardens replanted, and the people of Virel moved cautiously toward peace. Yet for Princess Elara, the events could never be forgotten. She often walked the quiet corridors, remembering the man who had changed her world. General Marcus Kane, the human warrior she had once feared, had become the reason her people could live freely again. He had risked everything, bled for their survival, and reminded them that courage was not limited to a single species. Years passed. The story of Marcus Kane spread beyond the palace walls, carried by survivors, soldiers, and children who had once hid under tables during the bombing. His name became legend. On Virel, he was no longer the feared human warrior. He was a hero, a man who had shown that even in the darkest times humanity could shine. Elara often visited the garden where he had almost died. There, a statue now stood, a towering figure of Marcus in battle armor, his face calm and resolute. The twin suns reflected off the polished metal, making him look alive even in stone. She approached the statue, placing her hand gently on its base. A single white flower lay at her feet, a symbol of hope and gratitude. Tears filled her eyes, but they were not of sorrow. They were tears of love, respect, and remembrance. "I was afraid of you once," she whispered, her voice carrying softly through the garden. "I thought you were only a warrior, a destroyer. But I see now. You were so much more. You were a protector. You were a hero. And because of you, my people live." Elara closed her eyes and imagined his voice, calm and gentle. "Keep the peace alive, princess," it seemed to say. "Make sure my sacrifice means something." She opened her eyes and looked toward the horizon, where the twin suns rose in the sky. "I promise, Marcus," she said firmly. "I will not let your gift be forgotten. I will keep the peace, and I will make sure the world remembers what humanity can be." The people of Virel began to rebuild not just their cities, but their hearts. Stories of Marcus Kane inspired young warriors and diplomats alike, teaching them that bravery, honor, and sacrifice could come from any world. The humans who had fought alongside him became allies, friends, and teachers to Virelians, and trust began to grow where fear had once ruled. Elara became a wise and just ruler, loved by her people. She carried the lessons of that night in her heart, that courage is not the absence of fear, that kindness is stronger than anger, and that even a single human soul could change the fate of a galaxy. On anniversaries of the day the war ended, she led ceremonies beneath the twin suns, telling children the story of the human warrior who saved their world. They listened with wide eyes, imagining his bravery, learning that heroes were not born. They were made through choice, sacrifice, and the willingness to stand for others. And somewhere beyond the stars, though the humans of Earth had returned home, the legend of Marcus Kane continued. His courage and humanity became a bridge between worlds, a reminder that even amidst destruction, hope could survive. Years later, as Elara walked through the palace gardens one last time before stepping onto the throne as empress, she paused at the statue. A gentle breeze stirred the white flowers at its base. She placed her hand on the cold metal and whispered softly, "You showed us what it means to be human. Thank you." For the first time in her life, she did not feel fear or sorrow. She felt awe, gratitude, and inspiration. Because the man who had once terrified her had left behind a gift far greater than victory, He had left behind proof that courage, sacrifice, and humanity could shine brighter than any star. And under the twin sons of Varel, his legacy lived on. The warrior who was feared became the savior who was remembered.